YouTube. My name's Horace and I'm the Car Chap, and welcome back to another video on my channel. And as you can see, today is a lovely sunny April day and I am absolutely baking. I'm boiling. By the way, thanks for your comments. There are a few people commenting on my videos and leaving likes and stuff like that, and I really appreciate it. It's good to talk to you guys, you know, and people who are in the same business and stuff like that. So yeah, here we are. Now you can't actually see, but funnily enough, there is a Peugeot 207 estate right in front of me on this road, and it's quite funny that there should be a Peugeot 207 in front of me, because I am in fact in a Peugeot 207. So yeah, I wanted to just talk a little bit about this car that I picked up for £600, and you know, I think it's a pretty good deal. I think when you talk about budget motoring, there are a few particular cars that spring to mind. I mean, Peugeot isn't exactly, as a brand, Peugeot isn't exactly known for its reliability, but nevertheless, I picked up this Peugeot 207 for £600 from a private seller, and when I bought it, it had quite a few problems. And you know, when I say problems, I don't mean like, oh, it needed, you know, a couple bits replacing. It had some problems. So when I started the car, when I was looking at buying it, it had a horrible noise, and although I'm no experienced mechanic, I diagnosed that noise as a slightly failing water pump, because it was like a churning noise and it was coming from the water pump area. So I thought, well, you know, it's got a cam belt history. It had a cam belt done, but you know, there was a bit of a churning. I thought, well, it just needs a water pump. I was wrong. Funnily enough, I did actually take photos, and it was the cam belt rubbing on the engine mounts. That noise was because a tensioner had failed, and obviously the cam belt had lost some part of its tension and it had started rubbing on the engine mounts. Now, I have never seen anything like this. It was unbelievable. But anyway, you know, I got the cover off at my local garage when I took it round to show them and get a bit of a quote on the work that needed doing. And you know, they just said, yeah, your cam belt's knackered, and I could see that. I couldn't believe that the cam belt, I mean, if you think of the belt, it's just rubbery material, right? And it had been rubbing against the engine mounts. I mean, that was just absolutely crazy. So anyway, new cam belt, new water pump, that's good. The only other thing that needed doing on this car was new tyres. Everything works, you know, the suspension's all good, no knocks or bangs, but the tyres were bald, and when I say bald, I mean bald. So yeah, all this car needed was new cam belt, new water pump, and new tyres all round. So that ended up costing me £400. Now, if you ask me, a reliable car that's rust-free, new cam belt, new water pump, new tyres, no knocks or bangs from the suspension, the brakes are good, clutch is alright, you know, £1,000 for a car like that. I know it's not the prettiest car, it's a Peugeot 207 and it's got those slightly faded headlamps, but nevertheless, this is a solid car. It's 1.4, 90 horsepower, and it gets very good MPG. It's a reliable little, you know, econobox, I suppose you'd call it. It's just an economic little car, and you know, I mean, there's not really anything more to say than that. It drives alright. It's a lot more spacious than a smaller car like a Chevy Spark or a Citroen C1, you know, other cars that you consider really reliable. So you know, if you want something that's going to be reliable and that's also a bit bigger, it's worth looking around, because although Peugeot 207s aren't known as being built like bricks and reliable as hell, if you find a good one that's got a good service history and it's been looked after a fair amount, you're not going to have many problems with it. This car's been in service now since I bought it for a few weeks in the family, well, maybe a couple months, and you know, it's running great. We've had no problems with it, no problems at all. It ticks over like a dream. The engine sounds great. I know I often say on these videos, you know, I don't see you getting better value in a car, and that's because I seem to find cars that are very good value. And you know, a car like this, £1,000, I mean, anybody could go and pick up a decent car on Facebook Marketplace, you know, talk the seller down a bit because of the problems it has, and then get a bit of work done to it and end up with a reliable, cheap car. And that's what I've done here. Now, if I were to start talking about how it drives, I think I would say just look at it, because in my opinion, this car drives exactly how it looks. Look at this car, have a good look at this car, look at the shape of it, look at where the wheels are, just eat it up with your eyes. Now imagine you're driving this car. That is exactly what it feels like. It feels quite nicely planted, but it doesn't corner particularly well, not that you'd expect it to. It doesn't brake particularly well, not that you'd expect it to. But it does drive smoothly, I'll give it that. But a really good point about this car is the steering is dead straight. It had an alignment done just before I bought it. So, you know, the wheel's just perfect. It's not pulling to any sides, and like I said before, the suspension's all good. This car doesn't seem to suffer with any of the common faults of the 207s. Although I will add that, well, this gearbox isn't at fault. It shifts perfectly, you know, there's no problem with the gearbox. But I have heard that over time they can get really whiny and you can have a problem with getting it into gears and stuff. And this car, like I said, doesn't have that. It shifts fine, it goes into gear fine. But what I will say about the actual gearbox that Peugeot give this car is that it is quite grunty. I mean, you can hear that the gearbox, at lower RPMs, it is just quite grunty. The engine sounds beautiful, but yeah, the gearbox, it is quite grunty. But that's not really something that you can, you know, point your finger at. I mean, it is a cheap car. You know, when it was new, it wasn't expensive. The 207 wasn't premium by any means, so you can't expect them to have put the best built and the highest quality gearbox in the car at all. So, you know, for the money, it's a brilliant gearbox. Even on small roads and going up hills where you need to accelerate and whatnot, I find I've been doing over 40 miles per gallon combined, which is, you know, that's pretty good. So there we are. I think we've summed up my £1,000 Peugeot 207. And keep in mind, that's not £1,000 I bought it for. That's £1,000 all in. You know, not everybody will share the price that they're all in on a car, but I'm all in £1,000 on this. I know it's a 2007, but remember, it is rust-free, rot-free. You know, it's in really good condition for its year. I enjoy making these videos where I just, you know, have a chat about what's wrong with my cars and, you know, what's right with them, because the best thing that I like to think about is what's right with them. Anyway, I hope you all have a very good Easter. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I hope very much to see you again next time. Bye bye.